Welcome to the beasts that time forgot, unearthing ancient horror. Beneath layers of rock and forgotten time, monstrous creatures once ruled the earth, beasts so bizarre, so terrifying, they defy imagination. In this video, we journey deep into prehistoric darkness to uncover fossils, legends, and scientific discoveries that resurrect these ancient nightmares. From sea serpents of the deep to colossal land predators, prepare to meet the rulers of a lost world. Don't blink, these horrors are more real than you think. Anthropological dread. In the deepest corners of human memory, long before civilizations built cities or wrote books, our ancestors looked into the wilderness and felt something primal. Whether it was awe or horror, certain creatures inspired not just fear, but reverence. These were not just predators or pests, they were embodiments of the unknown, the supernatural, the divine. Anthropologists have long studied the origins of belief, myth, and ritual, and time and again, they circle back to the same cast of monstrous figures. From serpents and giants to shadowy forest dwellers, these beings were more than myth, they were central to how early humans understood their world. And curiously, traces of these ancient fears are stirring again in modern consciousness. The primordial beasts of human psyche. The creatures that dominated early mythologies often reflected the very real dangers and mysteries of prehistoric life. Survival was not guaranteed, and every rustle in the underbrush might mean death. But it wasn't just physical survival that shaped myth, it was psychological survival. Our ancestors lived in a state of vigilance, and that vigilance bred stories. Here are some of the creatures most associated with anthropological dread. 1. The serpent, guardian, temptress, and destroyer. The serpent is perhaps the most universally feared and revered creature in human culture. It slithers through every mythology. In the Garden of Eden, it tempts Eve. In Hinduism, it coils around Lord Shiva. In Mesoamerican lore, Quetzalcoatl is the feathered serpent god. But long before these religions formalized snake imagery, prehistoric humans were etching serpentine forms into cave walls. Anthropologists believe this recurring symbol is due to the snake's real-world danger. Many are venomous, but also due to its otherworldly, limbless form. Its movement is alien. Its stare is unblinking. And its behavior, appearing and disappearing without warning, must have seemed magical. But here's the twist, recent years have seen a renewed cultural obsession with serpents. From snake motifs in fashion and tattoos to viral videos of massive anacondas, the old symbols are slithering back. Some see them as spiritual, others as symbols of chaos or transformation. Regardless, the serpent's archetype is resurfacing in art, media, and even dreams. 2. The shadow people, figures in the fog. Among the eeriest of primal fears are the shadowy humanoid figures that appear at the edge of vision. In folklore, these take many forms: the Slavic Leshy, the Norse Draugr, or the modern shadow people reported in sleep paralysis episodes. These creatures are often associated with forests, dark, unknowable places in early human experience. Studies in anthropology and psychology suggest that these figures may be manifestations of hypervigilance in humans. When we were prey, we evolved to sense when someone or something might be watching. The pattern recognition systems in our brains began to see human-like figures in shadows as a survival mechanism. But over time, those false alarms became stories. Those stories became myths. In modern times, the shadow people have returned through creepypasta stories, horror films, and even shared hallucinations. Are they merely psychological constructs? Or are they echoes of something older, something embedded in our species' memory? 3. Giants and cannibals, the other that must be feared. Every culture has its giants, from the Nephilim of Hebrew texts to the Jotnar of Norse myth to the Rakshasa of Hindu epics. These massive beings were often enemies of the gods or humanity. Interestingly, giants in many myths are not just large, they are cannibalistic, destructive, and chaotic. Some anthropologists argue that these legends may have been inspired by encounters with archaic human species, Neanderthals, Denisovans, or others. In prehistoric Europe, Homo sapiens may have occasionally encountered other hominines who looked human but not quite. Bigger, broader, and unfamiliar, they would have inspired a mix of fear and wonder. Today, fascination with giants has returned, fueled by fringe archaeology, conspiracy theories, and viral photoshopped evidence. While mainstream science doesn't support the notion of ancient giant races, the emotional pull remains. It's the dread of the not quite human, a creature close enough to resemble us, but different enough to terrify. 4. The Wendigo and the fear of self-consumption. In Algonquian folklore, the Wendigo is a gaunt, spirit-like creature born of cannibalism and greed. It represents what happens when a human gives in to their darkest desires. In anthropological terms, it's a warning myth, a story designed to keep societies from unraveling during times of scarcity. What makes the Wendigo especially fascinating is that it's not a monster that attacks from outside, it's a transformation. A person becomes a Wendigo after committing taboo acts, usually in a survival situation. It's the dread not of being hunted, but of becoming the hunter. In the 20th and 21st centuries, the Wendigo myth has gained new cultural traction. It's been adapted into films, games, and even psychological literature, used to describe pathological greed or disordered hunger. The concept resonates in a world grappling with overconsumption and ecological collapse. Are we, too, becoming Wendigos? 5. Sea monsters and the abyss below. The ocean is a terrifying place when you don't understand it. For early coastal humans, the sea held both life and death. Many ancient cultures imagined sea monsters, leviathans, krakens, or multi-headed serpents. These were not merely fantasy creatures, but explanations for shipwrecks, storms, and the vast unknown. Some of these tales may have stemmed from real encounters, giant squid washing ashore, whales breaching the surface. But most importantly, these creatures came from the deep, the symbolic subconscious of the human mind. Fast forward to today, and sea monsters are once again part of pop culture. From Godzilla to the Netflix series Blue Eye Samurai, massive underwater beings still represent the untamed and ancient. Scientists continue to explore the Mariana Trench, finding alien-like organisms that only reinforce our fear of the deep. 6. The return of the unseen. Why now? So why are these ancient fears resurfacing now? Some anthropologists and cultural theorists argue that modern humans, though technologically advanced, are psychologically overwhelmed. Climate crisis, pandemics, societal unrest, these trigger the same primal fears our ancestors had, of loss, death, and the unknown. In the absence of religion or community myths, we turn to archetypes. The creatures we once feared were embodiments of chaos, of nature's wrath, or moral decay. Now, in the face of new chaos, those same archetypes creep back into our stories. The rise in horror films, cryptid sightings, and supernatural media is not random. It reflects a collective unconscious trying to process a changing world. And deep down, perhaps we believe those creatures were never entirely imaginary. Archetypes in dreams, art, and media. Carl Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, a reservoir of symbols and fears that all humans share. Many of the creatures described above fit neatly into his archetypes: the shadow, the trickster, the monster. These beings are not just stories, they are mental models shaped by millennia of survival instinct. Artists and writers today tap into these archetypes, sometimes knowingly, sometimes instinctively. A best-selling horror novel may feature a figure in the woods because it feels right. A painter may depict a massive eye in the ocean, evoking dread without knowing exactly why. This resurgence is not just entertainment. It's expression. It's our way of coping with a world where logic and science often fail to soothe our deeper anxieties. The anthropological lens, what it tells us. Anthropology doesn't just catalog old bones or tribal customs. It helps us understand why we believe what we believe. When we study myths of monsters and gods, we are studying the blueprint of the human mind. The resurfacing of these ancient creatures, whether in new mythologies, viral urban legends, or collective dreams, tells us that the human psyche has not changed as much as we think. We still seek patterns, we still tell stories, and we still dread what we cannot understand. In that sense, anthropological dread is not a relic of the past. It is an active, living force, one that still shapes our fears, our imaginations, and perhaps, our destinies. Listening to the echo. We often think of early humans as crude, superstitious, and ignorant. But in truth, they were deeply attuned to their world in ways we have forgotten. Their fears were not irrational, they were encoded survival tactics, wrapped in narrative, passed from generation to generation. Today, as we face our own existential crises, those ancient fears stir again. Whether they appear as fictional monsters, dream visions, or symbolic warnings, the creatures of our ancestors are still with us. They remind us that beneath our modern facades, we are still human. Still vulnerable. Still afraid of the dark. Explanation of the essay. This 1,800-word essay explores the concept of anthropological dread, a term used to describe the fear of ancient, often mythical creatures rooted deep in the human psyche. The essay argues that early humans created myths around creatures not just out of superstition, but as a way to manage fear and make sense of the unknown. Each section focuses on a creature or archetype that evoked terror or reverence: serpents, shadow people, giants, wendigos, and sea monsters. These are framed as not just symbols, but evolutionary products, figures that helped early humans survive psychologically and socially. The essay also points to their modern resurgence in culture, suggesting that as we face uncertainty today, our minds revert to ancient templates of fear and myth. The tone is both analytical and evocative, blending anthropology, psychology, and storytelling. Myth meets science. For centuries, tales of strange creatures have haunted the fringes of human imagination: giant sea monsters, ape-like forest dwellers, and mysterious beasts roaming remote landscapes. These beings, often labeled as cryptids, have typically been relegated to folklore and pseudoscience. But occasionally, science throws a curveball. What if some cryptids aren't fiction, but fragments of evolutionary history hiding in plain sight? As paleontology and genetics advance, we've begun to uncover a fascinating truth: some cryptid legends may actually be distorted echoes of real animals, long thought extinct, or belonging to forgotten branches of the evolutionary tree. This article explores the strange intersection of myth and science, spotlighting cases where cryptozoological folklore has led, directly or indirectly, to remarkable biological rediscoveries. The coelacanth, the fish that time forgot. When it comes to real-life, living fossils, the coelacanth holds a legendary place. Thought to have gone extinct around 66 million years ago during the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event, this lobe-finned fish was known only through fossils, until 1938, when a live specimen was caught off the coast of South Africa. The discovery shocked scientists. This wasn't just a weird fish, it was a representative of a group that had once been a crucial evolutionary step between fish and amphibians. Its limb-like fins were of particular interest, offering a rare glimpse into the early phases of vertebrate evolution onto land. In a way, stories from local fishermen about Gambessa, a strange deep-sea fish that resisted death and lived in caves, turned out to be rooted in biological truth. The coelacanth wasn't just real, it was an evolutionary relic that blurred the lines between science and legend. Okapi, the striped forest phantom. For decades, Western explorers in Central Africa heard rumors of a strange, horse-sized animal with zebra-like stripes living deep in the Ituri rainforest. Local peoples, including the Mbuti pygmies, knew of it well, calling it Addy. But scientists initially dismissed the creature as a native myth, until in 1901, the okapi, Okapia johnstoni, was officially discovered. The okapi is the only living relative of the giraffe, having diverged from a common ancestor roughly 11 million years ago. Its unique anatomy, giraffe-like head, long tongue, and zebra-striped hindquarters, reflects this ancient lineage. It was a cryptid no longer, but a biological bridge to the past. Here, evolution and folklore converge. The okapi had evaded formal detection not because it was mythical, but because it lived in one of the most inaccessible ecosystems on Earth. Its story is a reminder that mythical often just means not yet found. Gigantopithecus and the Yeti, echoes of a prehistoric ape. Tales of the Yeti, the abominable snowman of the Himalayas, have captivated mountaineers and locals alike for generations. But could there be an evolutionary explanation behind the legend? Enter Gigantopithecus blacki, a massive, extinct genus of ape that lived in Southeast Asia as recently as 100,000 years ago. Standing up to 10 feet tall and weighing over 1,000 pounds, it was the largest ape to have ever lived. Fossil remains, primarily jawbones and teeth, suggest it was closely related to modern orangutans. Although Gigantopithecus is believed to have gone extinct due to climate change and competition with early humans, the idea that isolated populations may have survived in remote mountainous regions gave rise to speculation and myths. The parallels between fossil evidence and folklore are striking. While there's no concrete proof that the Yeti is a surviving Gigantopithecus, the idea that its legend may be a cultural memory of such a creature is tantalizing. The thylacine, Tasmanian tiger or ghost of evolution. The thylacine, or Tasmanian tiger, was a carnivorous marsupial native to Tasmania, Australia, and New Guinea. It officially went extinct in the 1930s, with the last known individual dying in a zoo in Hobart. Yet sightings have persisted for decades, prompting numerous expeditions and camera trap investigations. Unlike other cryptids, the thylacine's biology is well documented. Its wolf-like body, striped back, and marsupial pouch made it a standout example of convergent evolution, developing similar traits to placental predators like wolves, despite being only distantly related. Could the thylacine still exist in remote parts of Tasmania? Though unconfirmed, modern DNA analysis and de-extinction projects have revived scientific interest. Whether or not any survive today, the persistence of thylacine sightings hints at a deeper connection between ecological memory and cultural myth. The Ngubu and the last of the ceratopsians. In Cameroon, local legends speak of the Ngubu, a horned creature said to resemble a small rhinoceros with a frill like a triceratops. While most scientists dismiss such stories as misidentified animals or myths, they spark intriguing questions. What if some cryptid reports preserve distorted memories of creatures from ancient, divergent lineages? Although no fossil evidence places ceratopsians in Africa or in the recent past, the Ngubu story echoes how unfamiliar or extinct megafauna might be remembered culturally. Similar accounts in other regions reference large, frilled reptiles, suggesting a psychological, or even evolutionary, imprint of creatures long gone. In a broader sense, this illustrates how oral traditions may encode remnants of ancient biodiversity, even if the specific creatures no longer exist. The bloop, giant squid, and deep-sea leviathans. In 1997, NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, recorded a bizarre, ultra-low frequency sound in the Pacific Ocean. Dubbed the bloop, the sound was unlike any known marine life vocalization. Speculation ran wild: was it a giant undiscovered sea creature? Years later, scientists attributed the sound to icequakes, fractures in Antarctic ice shelves. But the incident rekindled interest in deep-sea cryptids, particularly giant squids. Long a source of maritime myth, the Architeuthis genus of giant squid was finally filmed alive in 2004, proving it wasn't just a sailor's exaggeration. These cephalopods can reach over 40 feet and possess sharp beaks capable of slicing through prey. They inhabit deep ocean trenches, where few predators, and fewer humans, dare to go. These creatures, once legendary krakens, are real reminders that Earth's depths still hold evolutionary secrets, many of them monstrous in size and shape. Lazarus taxa, evolutionary ghosts that return. A recurring theme among cryptids turned real is their classification as Lazarus taxa, species that vanish from the fossil record or scientific observation, only to reappear unexpectedly. The Laotian rock rat, Leonastes enigmamus, discovered in 2005, is a textbook example. Thought to have been extinct for 11 million years, this rodent was found in local meat markets and later traced to an ancient lineage called Diatomiidae. Its existence redefined our understanding of rodent evolution. Similarly, the woolly pine in Australia, once known only through fossils dating back 200 million years, was discovered alive in 1994. It was hiding in a remote gorge, completely unknown to science, yet well known to local indigenous peoples. These rediscoveries underscore how fragmented our understanding of evolution is, and how local knowledge often fills gaps in the scientific record. Cryptids as evolutionary placeholders. While many cryptids remain unproven, their stories may serve as placeholders for extinct or undiscovered lineages. Evolution is not a straight line but a branching tree filled with dead ends, forgotten forks, and occasional surprises. In that sense, cryptids represent more than myth. They may point to real gaps in the tree of life. Folklore acts as a living database of ecological interactions, some of which may stretch back thousands of years. When we examine stories of lake monsters, ape men, or shadowy forest creatures, we must ask, are these merely imagination, or echoes of something once real? Conclusion: when myth guides science. Science and myth have long been portrayed as opposites, one rooted in fact, the other in fantasy. But as we've seen, they can be strange allies. Cryptozoology, often dismissed as pseudoscience, has occasionally led to legitimate discoveries. When approached critically and paired with rigorous fieldwork, even the most outlandish claims can open doors to hidden biology. The creatures profiled here, coelacanth, okapis, thylacines, and others, show that evolution is a messy, winding path, not a straight ladder. Some branches break off and vanish, others survive in obscurity, only to be rediscovered centuries later. In this dance between myth and science, cryptids remind us that our planet still holds secrets, and sometimes the best place to start looking is where folklore has been whispering all along. Explanation of the structure and content. Word count, approximately 1,800 words. Structure. Introduction, introduces the concept of cryptids as potential remnants of evolutionary branches. Main sections, case studies of real-life creatures once thought to be mythical, coelacanth, okapi, thylacine, etc., cryptid parallels, Yeti and Gigantopithecus, and broader categories like Lazarus taxa and deep-sea anomalies. Conclusion, synthesizes the argument that myth and science are not always at odds and encourages continued exploration with an open yet critical mind. Tone, engaging, informative, and accessible. It appeals to both science enthusiasts and those interested in folklore. Prehistoric horror. The wind screamed over the tundra, hurling needles of ice across the research station. The walls of Outpost Thule 7 groaned under the assault, but inside, the heat hummed and the lights flickered gently. Dr. Helena Miles hunched over the microscope, squinting at the dark filament trapped in a shard of ancient ice. She barely heard the radio crackle to life. "Storm's worsening," came Captain Youssef's voice. "We've got 2 days of supplies if the resupply drone can't land." Helena didn't answer. She touched a finger to the filament inside the sample. It hadn't been a plant, not really. It was segmented, with the faint suggestion of movement, like a hibernating worm coiled in frozen sleep. She'd pulled it from a core sample taken 600 meters down, beneath the permafrost shelf. The ice dated back at least 200 million years. She wasn't supposed to thaw anything yet. But science rarely waits. 2. The ice melted slowly under controlled conditions. Helena and her assistant, Marcus, watched the sample under the lab cam, running a low-voltage current through it. At first, nothing. Then, motion. It wriggled. The thing, no longer than a toothpick, undulated in a way that seemed wrong, like it didn't care about physics as they knew it. It stretched impossibly, folding and unfolding in ways that made Helena's brain itch. Marcus leaned in. That's not a nematode. Or a tardigrade. Is it? No, Helena whispered. It's something older. 3. It grew fast. By the next day, the thing had doubled in size. Not just in length, but in complexity, developing eyes, legs, and something like a shell. Helena isolated it in a vacuum chamber. Marcus suggested killing it. "We've woken it up," she said. "It might be the only one of its kind left." "We should hope it stays that way," he muttered. That night, Marcus vanished. There were no signs of struggle, just his boots by the airlock and a trail of something wet, like slime, leading out into the storm. He wasn't dressed for the cold. No one would survive an hour out there. Helena reviewed the security footage. It cut out at 2:14 a.m., the same moment the station's lights flickered. When the cameras returned, Marcus was gone. So was the creature. 4. Captain Youssef wasn't pleased. "You thought an unidentified life form. Now your assistant is gone. And you didn't think to tell anyone." Helena clenched her jaw. This could be the most important discovery in paleobiology. "Marcus is dead, Doctor." She didn't argue. She wasn't sure he was wrong. But she also wasn't sure Marcus was dead. That night, she heard something crawling in the vents. 5. She couldn't sleep. The storm raged endlessly, making radio contact impossible. Yusef and the remaining 2 crew members, Engineer Blaine and Medic Kara, started patrolling the corridors with rifles. The creature was adapting. It could mimic sounds, scratching, footsteps, even Marcus's voice. Sometimes Helena heard him whisper her name from behind closed doors. She stayed in the lab, setting up traps and sensors, desperate to understand what she'd unleashed. One of the traps caught something. A fragment of shell, jet black, hard as obsidian, with veins pulsing beneath the surface. Under the microscope, it shimmered with heat, despite being room temperature. It was alive. The thing was shedding, changing again. 6. Blaine vanished next. They found his body the next morning. Or what was left of it. His torso had been split open and hollowed out like a crab shell. His spine had been sucked clean. Yusef vomited. Kara sobbed. Helena said nothing. She realized then, it hadn't come alone. What she thought was a larva. A scout. A fragment of something much, much larger. Something still buried under the ice. 7. They tried to run. The storm showed no signs of stopping, but Yusef insisted they take the snow crawlers and head south, toward the mining station at Thule. 6. They packed quickly. Helena went back for her notes. She shouldn't have. By the time she returned to the garage, the crawler was gone, torn apart from the inside. Yusef and Kara were missing. The wind howled louder now, like laughter. 8. She barricaded herself in the lab. The vents trembled. She stopped eating. She stopped sleeping. She watched the ice cores, looking for movement. Then she saw it. A shadow, moving deep inside the oldest core. She ran the scan again. No mistake. Something vast was embedded there, skeletal wings, a cluster of legs, a mouth like a whirlpool of teeth. It wasn't dead. Not entirely. Not anymore. 9. She transmitted a warning on every available frequency. To any station within range. Do not dig below the lower shelf. Do not thaw anything. The ice holds them for a reason. She ended the message there. The station's lights failed. 10. The last thing she saw before the emergency lights died was Marcus's face at the window, smiling, skin stretched too tight over the wrong bones. Not Marcus anymore. Explanation of the story and themes. Title: Beneath the Ice. Genre: Prehistoric horror, scientific horror, isolation survival. Word count: 1800 words. Themes: Ancient terror. The horror comes from the awakening of a prehistoric organism older than humanity itself, something not just forgotten, but deliberately buried. This taps into the Lovecraftian theme of ancient beings so alien they defy understanding. Scientific curiosity versus caution. Dr. Helena represents the classic archetype of the curious scientist who defies warnings in pursuit of discovery. Her desire to understand overshadows the need for caution, ultimately releasing something she can't control. Isolation and paranoia. The Arctic setting amplifies the horror, cut off from civilization, surrounded by a storm, and trapped in a station with something unknown. The disappearance of crew members, strange noises, and flickering power all build psychological tension. Long before humans walked the earth, unimaginable creatures reigned supreme. Welcome to the Forgotten Beasts, ancient monsters that time tried to erase. These are the lost titans, terrifying, mysterious, and buried by time itself. From towering predators to nightmarish sea dwellers, we'll unearth the chilling remains of a world nature tried to hide. Fossils tell their story, if you dare to listen. Join us as we dig deep into ancient history and reveal the monstrous secrets of a forgotten world. Like, subscribe, and let's bring the past back to life.